Hey guys, welcome to Living Environment. Today we are talking about using scientific method that we've been talking about and applying it to an actual experiment. So if you open Schoology to today's assignment, and I'll do that with you. So we're going to Schoology and to your course, and then we're going to the September folder and the week of 9/28 to 10/2. You'll see Scientific Method Lab Part 1. So you're going to click on that assignment, and then we're going to take a look at the do now. So today's do now is going to say, why is background research important when conducting an experiment? So why do you think background research is important when we are doing an experiment? So I'm going to have you pause here and think about the do now and then come back to us. So pause now. All right, so what do you think? Why is background research important when conducting an experiment? So some answers might be that in order to do an experiment, you have a question or problem about something, right? So you want to, before you start experimenting, you want to do some research to see what exactly is this all about, right? What is the problem or question that you have, and gathering information about that before you go ahead and set up your experiment. So today we're going to be working on the Cricut lab, following the prompts on the virtual lab. So when you are going through the lab, you are going to be completing the questions in Schoology as you go. So if we go back to our Schoology assignment, we can see here is the virtual lab instructions. So the directions are: use the information below and the link provided to complete a virtual lab on crickets and how the environment affects their chirping speed. What makes a cricket chirp? So here we're looking at the sound a cricket makes and how often or how infrequent the cricket chirps. So the question is, some say that if you listen to the sound of a cricket chirping, you can determine the temperature. Is this true, or is it just an urban legend? Do any other factors affect how fast a cricket will chirp, such as humidity, wind, atmospheric pressure, or nearby crickets? Our procedure is you will use the virtual lab to test a cricket subject. Our materials are the lab handout and your computer. And then the procedure, there is a tutorial that you can follow first if you'd like to get more comfortable with the assignment. Then we have, you're going to follow the instructions for investigating the role of the environmental variables on cricket chirps. For your investigation, you're going to choose values that are high and low. That way we get a very wide range of data and make it accurate. You're going to enter your results in the data tables provided. So if you scroll down, you'll see the data tables here. Depending on which variable you choose, you will draw the correct data table in your notebook or in a Word document and fill it out, since these are not able to be edited. These are just examples, and then you choose the one that fits your experiment. And then using that data, you will graph the results and write your conclusion. So that will be part 2. So today we're just looking at part 1. So if we click this link, it will open the lab itself. You click begin, and you can go through the tutorial first, and then when you're ready, you'll go to the Cricut. So this is the program that we'll be using. And we want to start out with our problem. So on several hikes in the White Tank Mountains, you come across a noisy cricket. However, every time you hear him, he is chirping at a different rate. On your first trip into the area, the cricket was chirping like this. So you can see how it's flashing the frequency of chirps. So on March 21st at 6 a.m., the cricket was chirping slow. Now we go to the same area a second time, and you're hearing the cricket chirp at a different rate. So we write down our data as 6/21, so we were there in June. At 2 p.m., he was chirping very fast. We're going to return one more time and record what we observe. Okay, so on 9/21 at 8 o'clock at night, he was chirping a medium rate. So now we know that every time we've seen him, he's chirped at a different frequency. So now we're curious and we want to investigate further. So we are going to take the cricket back to the lab and define the problem. So which of the following would be a good statement of the problem? Are we trying to find out that crickets seem to chirp at different rates? Is there a single factor that affects the chirping rate in crickets? I wonder why and how a cricket makes his chirping sound. So pause here and you decide which choice you think is correct. Okay, so we know that is there a single factor that affects the chirping rate in crickets is the correct problem because we want to know if the temperature changes the number of chirps the cricket does or how fast the cricket chirps. So now we are going to investigate. We are going to do some background research on cricket chirps. So reading articles and reference books, we find the following information. Only male crickets chirp. They do so by rubbing one wing against the other or by rubbing their legs against the wings. Crickets hear with their elbows. Their ears are small discs near one of the joints on the front leg. Crickets have several chirp patterns. The one we usually hear is the calling song used by males to attract females. Some crickets are mute. They don't chirp. Some of the mute crickets live in caves. In parts of Africa, cricket songs are believed to have magical powers. The male cricket sings underground. Crickets belong to the order Orthopetra. This is the same order that includes grasshoppers, katydids, walking sticks, and roaches. And that's all of the information we were able to collect. So now using that information, we're going to make our hypothesis. So when making a hypothesis, we want to keep in mind what it is we are trying to discover. What is one factor that affects the chirping rate in crickets? So here, you're going to choose one thing to change. What we are changing here is the independent variable. So take a moment and select which you would like to change. Okay, so I'm going to choose air temperature. So this means that that's my independent variable. So I'm going to go back to my Schoology assignment, and I'm going to type in here, in question number 2, that my independent variable is air temperature. For question number 3, it's asking the dependent variable in this experiment is what? So if we're changing air temperature, what is it that we're measuring? What are we trying to figure out? We're trying to figure out if air temperature affects the number or frequency of chirps the cricket does. So here, our dependent variable is the number of cricket chirps. So now let's put that together in our hypothesis. So remember, you're always following the if, then, because format. So if the air temperature increases, then the number of cricket chirps will decrease because the hotter the temperature, right? So that's my guess. That's my educated guess. So I'm changing the air temperature. That's my independent variable. I'm measuring the cricket chirps, and I think that they're going to decrease because when air temperature increases, I think the crickets are hot and they're not going to chirp as much. That's my hypothesis. So let's test it. So let's go back to the experiment. So we've changed air temperature. Should the other stuff change? No. Why should they be kept the same? Because when you're doing an experiment, if you have more than one thing changing, you're not going to know which is actually affecting your results. So if I changed the number of crickets and the air temperature, I'm not going to know what changes my results, whether it was from the air temperature or the number of crickets around. So we cannot change anything else except for the air temperature. So if we go back to Schoology, question number 4 is asking you to name at least 3 things to remain constant. So what are 3 things that should stay the same? Everything else should stay the same, right? The only thing we're changing is air temperature. So here, all of these other things will remain the same. So we can put wind speed, the atmospheric pressure, we can put the humidity, we can even put the person conducting the experiment, right? Because I don't want to collect data on one day and then have someone else collect it on a Tuesday. It might not be the same method in collecting data, so it might make our results different. We also want to make sure that the type of cricket is the same. Right? We don't want to have 5 different kinds of crickets. That might change the results as well. And then question number 5 is asking, why is it important to test only one variable at a time? So like we said before, it's important because if you change more than one thing, you won't know which is affecting your results. So we need to only have one variable. Okay. So now what I'm going to have you do is pause. In just a moment, I'm going to have you pause, and you're going to draw the appropriate data table in your notebook. So if you chose wind speed as your variable, you would draw this table. I chose air temperature, so I'm going to draw this table. However, I'm not going to include this last column because we just answered that in question 4. So you don't have to write the 3rd column, just whatever your variable is and the chirp rate. So pause here and draw the correct data table in your notebook, and then come back and we will do the experiment. Okay, so you are back and ready to do the experiment. So here we have selected air temperature. So what we need to do is we need to put in different values for the air temperature and record the results in our data table. So for example, I might start out with the highest temperature and see what happens. All right, so 45 degrees Celsius, the cricket chirped 292 times. So you're going to put that information into your data table. Take a few moments to pause here and carry out the remainder of the experiment. Now that you have the data in your data table, you're going to stop here, and on Thursday, I am going to post part 2 of this lab. So tomorrow, Wednesday, you can hop on for a extra help if you would like. It's not mandatory, but if you have specific questions that you want to address, please join us. And then Thursday, we'll start part 2. So look out for that.